The click of the safe was the sound my world made as it shattered. For 45 years that sound had been a promise. A promise of security, of memories, of a love that had built this life from the ground up. Today the click was a hollow mockery. The heavy steel door swung open, its familiar groan now a death rattle. Inside, where velvet nests should have cradled my history, there was nothing. Only empty, shadowed spaces staring back at me. My grandmother's rose gold locket, the one she wore the day she sailed to a new country. The diamond tennis bracelet from my husband, James, for our 30th anniversary. The simple gold bands we bought for each of our 3 children when they graduated. The emerald drop earrings I wore to my daughter's wedding. A lifetime. Vanished. My knees buckled. The door frame, solid oak James had installed himself, was the only thing holding me up. The air was knocked from my lungs, leaving a vacuum of pure, undiluted loss. How? The word was a ghost of a sound. No one knew the combination. No one except, looking for something, Margaret? The voice was smooth as silk, laced with a subtle amusement that made my blood run cold. I turned, my movements slow, deliberate, as if moving through water. There she stood. Cassandra, my daughter-in-law, leaning against the doorframe of my bedroom, a porcelain mug of tea in her hand, her expression one of polite inquiry. But her eyes, those cool gray eyes, held a glint of triumph. My jewels, I whispered, my voice raw. They're gone. Cassandra took a sip of her tea, her composure a brutal contrast to my crumbling world. Oh, that. Yes, we cleared all that out. Donated it. You've been saying for years we should declutter, Margaret. All that old dusty stuff. You don't need it anymore. Donated. The word echoed in the silence, a blasphemy. Donated. I managed to choke out. Cassandra, those were mine. They were all I had left of James. She sighed, a patient put upon sound. They're just material things. You always taught us that what matters is in here. She tapped a manicured finger over her heart. Besides, at your age, what are you going to do with it? You barely leave the house. It was just gathering dust, a security risk. Tears burned hot and sharp behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give her the satisfaction. I took a deep, shuddering breath, then another, pulling air into my lungs like a diver preparing for a deep plunge. When I looked at her again, my vision was clear, my voice eerily calm. You're right, Cassandra, I said, my tone flat. I don't need those jewels anymore. A smug, victorious smile touched her lips. It was the same smile she'd worn when she'd first suggested moving in to help me. I took a single step toward her, my worn slippers silent on the Persian rug. But you, I said, locking my gaze with hers, you are going to need a phenomenal lawyer. The color drained from her face so completely it was as if a switch had been flipped. The porcelain mug rattled in its saucer. The mask of the perfect, caring daughter-in-law was ripped away, revealing the stunned, calculating woman beneath. For the first time in 2 years I saw her speechless. And in that glorious, silent moment, I knew the war had just begun. Because I was not the confused, frail old woman she took me for. I was Margaret Croft. I had been married to a titan of industry for 50 years. I had navigated social minefields that would have destroyed a lesser person. I had built a fortress of a life, and this woman, this viper I had let into my nest, was about to learn the price of stealing the last pieces of my history. She took a step back. Margaret, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you will, I said softly, the ghost of a smile on my own lips. You will very soon. I walked out of the bedroom, my head held high, leaving her pale and trembling in my wake. Because that afternoon I made the most important call of my life. A call that would change everything. What do you think I did next? Called my son? Phoned the police? The truth is far more calculated. To understand how I reached that precipice, you have to go back 4 years. To the day the earth opened up and swallowed my world whole. The day I buried James. It was a Tuesday. The sky was a relentless, cloudless blue. a cruel joke on a day meant for mourning. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and freshly turned earth. I stood at the edge of the grave, my black dress, the one James said made me look like a classic film star, feeling like a suit of armor. 50 years. 5 decades of shared mournings, whispered secrets, fierce arguments, and deeper reconciliations. It had ended not with a bang, but with the silent random crack in the universe. A catastrophic stroke in his study mid-sentence, as he was telling me about a new acquisition for the company. One moment he was there, the next, he was gone. No goodbye. No final words. Just a half-finished sentence hanging in the air between us. The first few months were a blur of silent agony. Our home, a grand, sprawling estate on the outskirts of Boston that had once vibrated with laughter and life, became a mausoleum. His leather chair by the fireplace sat empty. His favorite pen lay untouched on his desk. The scent of his cologne clung stubbornly to his sweaters in the closet, which I refused to move. My children did their best. Elizabeth, my eldest, flew in from Seattle as often as she could, her own life as a surgeon a whirlwind of responsibility. Michael, my middle child, called from London every Sunday without fail. And then there was Thomas, my youngest, my baby. Thomas was the only one who lived nearby. He had his father's gentle eyes and my temperamental heart. In those first dark months he was my anchor. He came over every other day. He brought me groceries, fixed leaky faucets, and sat with me in the evenings when the silence was loudest. And then, 6 months after the funeral, he brought her. "Mom," he'd said, his face brighter than I'd seen it since his father's death. "I want you to meet Cassandra." She was stunning. Tall and willowy, with ash blonde hair that fell in a perfect sheet to her shoulders and cool, intelligent gray eyes. She held out a hand, her grip firm, her smile warm and seemingly genuine. "Mrs. Croft," she'd said, her voice a soft, cultured alto. "It's an honor. Thomas has told me so much about you. I'm so incredibly sorry for your loss." In my grief-stricken, lonely state, I felt a flicker of something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. In the months that followed, Cassandra became a fixture. She was charming, helpful, and impossibly clever. She remembered my favorite tea, my preferred brand of marmalade. She would walk with me through the extensive gardens, listening patiently as I told her stories about James, about the children, about the life we had built. She made me feel seen. She made me feel less alone. When Thomas announced they were engaged, I cried tears of pure joy. The wedding was an elegant, intimate affair at a local country club. I paid for the string quartet and the open bar, happy to contribute to my son's happiness. And then came the proposal. "Margaret," Cassandra said one afternoon, her hand covering mine. We were in the sunroom, the late afternoon light painting the room in gold. "This house is so vast for one person. And Thomas and I are stuck in that cramped, soulless apartment. What would you think? What would you think if we moved in here? With you. We could be a proper family. You wouldn't have to be alone anymore." My heart, that foolish, hopeful organ, leaped into my throat. Company. The sound of voices in the morning. The shared meals. The simple, profound comfort of not being the only soul in a house of ghosts. "It would just be temporary," Thomas added, his eyes pleading. "Just until we get on our feet, save up for a down payment on our own place. What do you say, Mom?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. 2 years ago, Thomas and Cassandra moved into the east wing of the house. First, it was perfect. Cassandra was a gifted cook. We had family dinners. Thomas would light the fire on Friday nights and we'd watch old movies just like we used to. For a beautiful, fleeting moment, the house felt alive again. But the poison began to drip, so subtly I almost didn't taste it. It started with the small things. "This wallpaper is so dated, Margaret. What if we refreshed this room?" I agreed. It was just wallpaper. Then it was the furniture. "This settee is beautiful, but it's not very comfortable, is it? And it's so bulky." It was donated, replaced by a sleek modern piece that felt alien in my home. Then came the suggestions about my life. Margaret, you're not still driving that old car, are you? It's not safe. Those friends from your charity guild, they're so draining. All they do is gossip. And I, like a fool, listened. Because the fear of being alone again was a cold fist around my heart. Because Cassandra always framed it with a smile, with a tone of gentle concern. The watershed moment came when she offered to help with my finances. Margaret, you shouldn't have to worry about bills and paperwork at your age, she'd said, her expression the picture of sincere worry. Let me handle it. It will free you up to enjoy your life. I just need you to sign a few papers so I can manage the accounts. And I, desperate to be relieved of a burden, desperate to please the woman who had brought my son such happiness, signed. I didn't know I was signing the warrant for my own financial execution. Little by little, the house ceased to be mine. Decisions were made without my consultation. My opinion was brushed aside as the ramblings of an old woman clinging to the past. A landscape painting James and I had bought on our trip to Tuscany disappeared, replaced by a garish abstract print. My mother's silver tea service was donated because it was too much trouble to polish. When I protested, Cassandra would look at me with such profound pity it made my skin crawl. You're becoming so difficult, Margaret. You have to learn to let go. It's not healthy to cling so tightly to things. Thomas said nothing. He worked long hours at the firm, came home tired, and when I tried to talk to him he'd just say, Mom, Cassandra is only trying to help. Don't make things harder than they need to be. My other children tried to warn me. Elizabeth's voice was sharp with concern over the phone. Mom, she's isolating you. She's taking over. Can't you see it? But I defended her. She's just trying to help me, Elizabeth. Don't be unfair. One day you're going to see what's happening, Mom, Elizabeth had said, her voice heavy with resignation. And I just hope it's not too late. She was right. Living with Cassandra became a daily exercise in walking on shards of glass. The control was insidious, a slowly tightening noose. My mornings, once a sacred time of quiet reflection with my coffee and the newspaper, became a source of tension. Margaret, could you possibly be a little quieter? The clinking of your cup is so sharp first thing in the morning. My life had been reduced to noise, so I began to tiptoe. I drank my coffee in the cold, silent kitchen, the rich aroma my only comfort, afraid that even the sound of swallowing was too loud. The control over my money was absolute. One day I wanted to buy a birthday present for my grandson Liam, his 10th birthday. I always bought him a book from a special antique bookstore he loved. My purse was empty. My credit cards were gone. Cassandra, have you seen my cards? She didn't look up from her tablet. I have them, Margaret. Remember? I'm managing the expenses now. What do you need? I want to get a gift for Liam. She sighed, the sound dripping with annoyance. We already got him a very nice video game from the whole family. You don't need to spend extra. But I always get him a book, I protested, feeling like a chastised child. Margaret, she said, finally looking at me, her gaze cool and dismissive. At your age, you don't need to be spending money on whims. You need to be saving. Why do you insist on spoiling him? I stood there, rendered mute and useless. I went to Liam's party empty-handed. The confusion and disappointment in his eyes when he asked, Nana, where's my special book? Is a scar I will carry forever. My friends were systematically removed. My weekly lunches with Sarah and the girls were sabotaged with excuses about my fragile health, last-minute errands Cassandra needed me for, or thinly veiled insults about my friends being bad influences. When Sarah called, worried, saying Cassandra had told her I was becoming forgetful and shouldn't be going out alone, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. The humiliation was complete. I stopped returning their calls. The final, ultimate degradation came on a day I simply wanted to feel like myself again. I asked Cassandra for some cash to get my hair done at my usual salon. She laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Your hair? What for? You don't go anywhere, Margaret. It's a waste of money. I just want to feel presentable. At your age, those things don't matter, she said, looking me up and down with a disdain that stripped me bare. If you want, I can trim your ends for you in the kitchen. It'll be fine. James had always told me I was the most beautiful woman in any room. He bought me French perfume, took me to the opera, made me feel cherished and elegant well into my 70s. And now his son's wife was telling me it wasn't worth the effort to even look in the mirror. But the worst, the part that truly broke me, was Thomas. My son had become a stranger, a ghost in his own home. He was a silent accomplice, a void where my ally should have been. One evening, I found him alone on the back terrace, staring into the dark. I gathered my courage, the last dregs of it. Thomas, honey, we need to talk. He didn't look at me. What is it, Mom? It's Cassandra. The way things are. I feel like a prisoner in my own home. She's taken my money, my friends, my voice. He tensed, his shoulders hunching. Mom, don't start. Cassandra sacrifices so much to be here. She manages this entire house for you. Manages it? Thomas, she's stealing from me. She's isolating me. Enough, he roared, spinning to face me, his face contorted with the anger I'd never seen directed at me. Mom, you are the problem. You are paranoid, and you're clinging to a past that's gone. You make her feel like an intruder in her own home. The words were physical blows. I was speechless, tears streaming down my face now. He got up and stormed back into the house, leaving me alone in the cold, the silence ringing with his betrayal. But just before he turned away, I saw it. A flicker in his eyes. A flash of doubt, of guilt. It was gone in an instant, but I had seen it. He knew. Some part of him knew the truth, and the cognitive dissonance was tearing him apart. That night, I understood the full scope of my defeat. I was utterly alone. Cassandra had won. She had turned my son against me, severed my connections to the outside world, and taken control of my life. And I had let her. Out of fear. Out of loneliness. But I still had no idea how far she was willing to go. The worst was yet to come. The theft of the jewelry was not the end game. It was merely the opening move in a final brutal play for everything. And it began on my birthday. Of course. Here are chapters 4 through 8 of The Silent War of Margaret Croft. Continuing the story in the same detailed, emotional style. September 12. My 74th birthday. For decades, this date had been a jubilant affair. James would wake me with a single perfect red rose and a pot of strong English breakfast tea. The house would be filled with the scent of his famous blueberry pancakes by the time I came downstairs. The children would call, their voices a cacophony of love and laughter. In the evening there would be a party, intimate or grand, it didn't matter so long as I was surrounded by the people I loved. This year was different. It was my second birthday without James, and the first under Cassandra's shadow. I woke with a leaden weight in my stomach. The other side of the bed was cold, a permanent state now. I dressed carefully, choosing a lilac silk blouse James had always complimented. A small futile act of defiance. Downstairs the house was silent. Thomas had already left for work. Cassandra was still in her room. I made my own coffee, the ritual feeling hollow. I sat at the vast kitchen island, the marble cool beneath my elbows, and watched the clock.
8 Uhr AM.
Nothing.
9 Uhr AM.
Silence.
10 Uhr AM.
The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. At 10:30, Cassandra emerged, swaddled in a white robe, her face illuminated by the screen of her phone. She glided past me to the espresso machine. Morning, Margaret. Good morning, Cassandra. I waited, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. She poured her espresso, never looking up from her phone. She took a sip, scrolled, and walked out of the kitchen without another word. Nothing. Not a happy birthday. Not a card. Not a glance. The coffee in my cup had gone cold and bitter. I drank it anyway, the taste a perfect metaphor for my life. The afternoon brought a flicker of cruel hope. I heard Cassandra on the phone in the living room. Yes, around 7 is perfect. Yes, bring champagne. It's going to be a wonderful night. My foolish heart leaped. A surprise party? Were they, after all this, going to do something for me? Had I misjudged them? The hope was so sharp it was painful. At 6 p.m., Cassandra found me reading in the library. Margaret, some of my colleagues are coming over tonight for a little networking thing. It might get a bit loud. Would you mind terribly staying in your room after 7? Or at least keeping to the east wing? The hope shattered, leaving behind a cold, sharp clarity. It wasn't for me. It was for her. Your colleagues, I repeated, my voice flat. Cassandra, today is my birthday. She blinked, as if I'd mentioned an obscure historical fact. Oh, that's right. Happy birthday, Margaret. She gave me a tight, perfunctory smile and turned to adjust a cushion on the sofa. Now about tonight. Cassandra, I thought. She turned back, her patience visibly fraying. You thought what? The words died in my throat. What had I thought? That this woman who saw me as furniture would suddenly morph into a loving daughter? I saw the truth in her impatient eyes. Nothing, I whispered. It's nothing. Well then, since you're up, can you help me with the hors d'oeuvres? The caterers left everything in the fridge. And so, on my 74th birthday in my own home, I prepared canapés for the colleagues of the woman who was systematically erasing me. The guests arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. 5 women and 3 men, all sharp-suited, loud-voiced, and smelling of expensive perfume and ambition. Cassandra greeted them with air kisses and effusive laughter. This is my mother-in-law, Margaret, she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction as I passed with a tray of smoked salmon blinis. Margaret, be a dear and see if anyone needs their glass topped up. I was not a guest. I was part of the help. A ghost in a lilac blouse. I didn't hide. Something stubborn and fierce within me refused. I sat in a high-backed chair in the corner of the grand living room, a piece of the scenery. They talked over me, around me, through me. I was invisible. And then I heard it. The conversation that would change everything. Cassandra was in the adjoining conservatory with 2 of her female colleagues. The archway between the rooms meant their voices carried perfectly. So Cass, when do you and Thomas get the keys to your own place? One asked. Cassandra laughed, a low, confident sound. Why would we leave? This place will be ours soon enough. Really? How? The old bird has signed everything I've put in front of her, Cassandra said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur that I had to strain to hear. Power of attorney is just a formality at this point. Thomas is completely on board. It's just a matter of time. My blood turned to ice. I stopped breathing. But what about her? The other woman asked. I'm already working on that, Cassandra said smoothly. I've found a lovely assisted living facility just outside Hartford. Very reputable. Once she's comfortably settled there. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The 3 of them shared a knowing, cruel laugh. Once she's there, Cassandra continued, we sell this white elephant. The property alone is worth over $2 million. We'll buy a stunning modern penthouse in the city and have a massive nest egg left over. But won't she fight it? Fight? Cassandra scoffed. How? She's a confused old woman. I've already laid the groundwork with her doctor. Concerns about her memory. Increasing confusion. It won't be hard to get a medical certification that she needs full-time care. After that, it's a done deal. I sat frozen, my hand clenched around the arm of the chair. This wasn't just about money or control anymore. This was about my freedom. My very life. The final soul-crushing blow came when Thomas arrived home. He walked in, saw the party, and smiled. He kissed Cassandra on the cheek, accepted a glass of wine, and was drawn into the circle in the conservatory. From my corner, I watched the scene unfold like a silent film. I saw Cassandra pull him close and whisper in his ear, I saw her gesture subtly in my direction. I saw the look on Thomas's face, a flicker of discomfort, a grimace of unease. And then I saw him nod. A slow, resigned, devastating nod. My son. My baby. He had just agreed to my imprisonment. Something inside me broke. Not with a sob, but with a silent tectonic shift. The last vestige of the grieving, lonely, pliable woman I had been crumbled into dust. I rose silently. No one noticed me leave. I walked up the grand staircase, my steps steady, my back straight. I entered my bedroom, closed the door, and locked it. Then and only then did I allow the tears to fall. They were not tears of self-pity, but of pure, incandescent rage. I cried for James, for the life we built, for the son I felt I had lost, for the woman who had been brought so low. I looked at my reflection in the gilded mirror over the vanity. The woman staring back had red-rimmed eyes, her lovely lilac blouse now a symbol of her humiliation. She looked defeated. But then I looked closer. I saw the set of her jaw. I saw the fire igniting in the depths of her eyes. I saw the hands that had held her children, comforted her husband, and built a life of strength and grace. I wiped my tears with a sharp, angry motion. No more. The words were a vow, spoken into the silent, sacred space of my room. Asterisk, no more hiding. No more submission. No more being Margaret the victim. Asterisk, I picked up my cell phone, my fingers trembling not with weakness but with purpose. I scrolled past Thomas's number, past my children's numbers, and found the one I needed. I pressed call. It rang once, twice. A deep, familiar voice answered. Charles Whitlock. Charles, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, devoid of all tremor. It's Margaret Croft. I need your help. I'm at war. Charles Whitlock had been James's best friend, his consigliere, and the sharpest legal mind in Boston for 40 years. He was a bear of a man with a gruff exterior and a heart of absolute loyalty. He had given the eulogy at James's funeral, his voice breaking only once. The next morning, I told Cassandra I had a dental appointment. Do you need me to drive you? She asked without looking up from her tablet. No. I'll manage. Don't be too long. The landscapers are coming, and I'll need you to let them in if I'm out. The audacity, the sheer ownership in her tone, fueled my resolve. I simply nodded and walked out the door. Charles's office was in a venerable old building in the heart of the financial district, all dark wood and leather. His secretary, a woman who had been with him for 30 years, showed me right in. Margaret, Charles said, rising from behind his massive desk and coming around to envelop me in a hug that smelled of cigar smoke and peppermint. It was the first real safe human contact I'd had in years. I almost broke down then and there, but I held fast. He held me at arm's length, his keen eyes scanning my face. You look tired. I'm being systematically dismantled, Charles. My own family is looting me. He guided me to a chair and returned to his throne behind the desk. Start from the beginning. Leave nothing out. And so I did. I told him about the empty safe, the donated jewelry. I detailed the financial control, the stolen debit cards, the missing funds. I described the isolation from my friends, the daily humiliations, the way my opinions were treated as senile ramblings. I told him about Thomas's betrayal, his transformation from a loving son into Cassandra's silent partner. And finally, my voice shaking with a fresh wave of fury, I told him what I had overheard at my birthday party. The plan for the power of attorney, the assisted living facility, the sale of my home. Charles listened in silence, his steepled fingers pressed to his lips, his expression growing grimmer with every passing minute. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, his pen scratching furiously. When I finished, he removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Margaret, he said, his voice low and grave. This is a textbook case of financial elder abuse, coercion, and fraudulent misrepresentation. It's also, from what you've described, emotionally monstrous. We have grounds for both civil and potentially criminal action. Can we stop her, Charles? Can I get my life back? We can do more than stop her, he said, a glint in his eye that reminded me fiercely of James. We can make her wish she'd never laid eyes on this family. But we have to be smart. If we confront her now, she'll destroy evidence, manipulate Thomas further, and likely transfer whatever money is left. We need to play a longer game. What's the first move? Evidence, he said, tapping his pen on the pad. I'm going to hire a private investigator. We need to find those jewels. We need a full forensic audit of your account since the day you gave her access. We need witnesses, your other children, your friends. And most importantly, we need to know your legal standing inside and out. He pulled a thick folder from a drawer. It was James's will and the property deeds. For the next hour, Charles Whitlock, the legendary attorney, gave me a masterclass in my own life. He showed me that the house was solely in my name, with a clear, ironclad clause in James's will leaving it to me outright. Cassandra had zero legal claim. We also reviewed the bank accounts. The access you gave her was a mistake, but it's not irreparable. We will open a new account in your name only, and we will transfer every last cent that remains before she realizes what's happening. What if she finds out? What if she gets angry? Charles leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. Let her get angry, Margaret. This is your money, your house, your life. It's time you started acting like it. I left his office an hour later, the crisp autumn air feeling like a baptism. For the first time in years, I walked with my spine straight and my head held high. I had a general. I had a plan. The war was no longer a desperate, internal struggle. It had a battlefront. The following Monday, I went to my bank. With Charles on the phone with the branch manager, I opened a new private account. With a few signatures, the $15,000 that remained in my old account, a pittance compared to what had been there, was transferred to a place Cassandra could not touch. It was a small victory, but it was mine. I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt since James's death. Next came the evidence gathering. Charles's investigator, a discreet man named Miles, got to work. Within a week he had photos. My jewelry, the locket, the bracelet, the emeralds, was sitting in a pawn shop in a less savory part of town. The ticket was in the name of Cassandra Evans. She hadn't even used her married name. The pawn value, $45,000. $45,000 for a lifetime of memories. Charles slid the photos and the bank statements across his desk to me a few days later. The highlighted figures were a brutal ledger of my betrayal. Total withdrawals and unauthorized transfers over the last 22 months, Charles said, his voice devoid of all emotion. $127,500. The number hung in the air, suffocating. It wasn't just the money. It was the brazenness. It was the sale of my plot of land in the Berkshires, the cashing out of a bond James had left me. I felt sick. Can I get it back? We can try, Charles said. But first we make our case airtight. We need more than paper. We need her voice. He handed me a small, sleek digital recorder. Keep this with you. Leave it on during conversations. In this state, it's legal to record someone as long as one party consents, and you are that party. Get her on tape admitting to anything. Planning anything. My cell phone became my secret weapon. I'd casually leave it on the table recording while Cassandra took phone calls. I recorded her telling a friend, "The power of attorney is the final piece. Once I have that, I can sell this mausoleum and we're set for life." I recorded her complaining to Thomas, "Your mother is so difficult. I can't wait until we have this place to ourselves." I recorded Thomas himself, his voice weary, asking, "Are you sure about this, Cass? The home? It feels extreme." And her chilling reply, "It's necessary, Thomas. She's not the woman she was. She's a liability." Each recording was a shard of glass in my heart, but I collected them meticulously. They were my ammunition. Charles counseled patience. We can't move yet. We need her to get so confident, so sure of her victory, that she makes a fatal mistake. We need the perfect moment to spring the trap. That moment, I knew, would require an audience. It would require my other children. That night, I called Elizabeth in Seattle. It was late there, but she answered on the first ring, her surgeon's voice alert. Mom? Is everything okay? No, honey, I said, my voice calm but firm. It's not. I need you to come home. What's happened? Are you sick? It's worse than sick. It's Cassandra. Everything you warned me about was true. It's so much worse than I let on. I took a deep breath. I can't explain it all over the phone. But I need you here. It's urgent. There was a long pause. I could hear the hum of a hospital in the background. I knew it, she whispered, her voice thick with a mixture of fury and vindication. I knew that which was. I'm on the next flight. I'll be there tomorrow. Next, I called Michael in London. I gave him the same message. He, ever the pragmatic financier, asked sharp, precise questions I couldn't fully answer. But he heard the steel in my voice, a tone he hadn't heard since his father died. I'll be on the first flight I can get, Mom. I told Cassandra that Elizabeth and Michael were coming for a spur-of-the-moment family visit, that I was feeling lonely and missed my children. She was immediately suspicious. Why now? Did you say something to them? I just miss my children, Cassandra. Is that a crime now? I held her gaze, and for the first time, it was she who looked away, a flicker of unease in her eyes. The house came alive when Elizabeth and Michael arrived. Their presence filled the void, their voices a familiar, comforting symphony. But the joy was tempered by the tension that crackled in the air whenever Cassandra entered the room. That first night, after Cassandra and Thomas had retired, I gathered my two eldest children in the library, the room that had always been James's sanctuary. I poured 3 glasses of brandy. Okay, Mom, Elizabeth said, her no-nonsense demeanor firmly in place. We're here. Talk. And I laid out the entire sordid story. I showed them the photos from the pawn shop. I showed them the highlighted bank statements. I played them the recordings. I watched their faces transform from concern to shock, from shock to horror, and from horror to a cold, blistering rage. That viper, Elizabeth hissed, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. I'll kill her. I swear to God I will. Michael was quieter, his anger turning inward. And Thomas? He knew. He let this happen. He's under her spell, Michael, I said, my heart aching. But he's still your brother. And in the end, he's going to need us. We have to confront them. Now, Elizabeth said, standing up. No, I said, my voice firm. Not yet. Charles has a plan. We need to do this right. We need to be witnesses. We need to be united when the time comes. We need to be the family Cassandra tried to destroy. We spent the next 2 days as a united front. We cooked together, we laughed at old stories, we deliberately excluded Cassandra from our conversations. We were reclaiming the territory, inch by inch. I could see it unnerving her. She watched us like a hawk, her smile growing more strained by the hour. The final piece of our plan arrived on Sunday. My sister Agnes, a retired family court judge. She was a woman who understood the law and human duplicity better than anyone I knew. Her arrival, under the guise of a friendly visit, sent a clear, unspoken message to Cassandra. The matriarchs were assembling. The trap was almost set. The night before the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the window seat of my bedroom, looking out over the moonlit gardens James had so lovingly designed. This was my kingdom. Every tree, every flower bed, every stone on the path held a memory of our life together. I thought of the timid, heartbroken woman I had been just months ago. The woman who jumped at Cassandra's voice, who apologized for existing, who believed her own life was over. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper but infinitely stronger. I was no longer just Margaret Croft, James's widow. I was Margaret Croft, the defender of her own legacy. I picked up the small, framed photograph of James on my nightstand. He was caught mid-laugh, his eyes crinkled at the corners, forever vibrant. "Well, my love," I whispered into the quiet room. "Tomorrow I take it all back. Our home. Our dignity. I'm going to teach that woman what it means to cross a Croft." I could almost hear his voice, rich and warm, echoing from the past. That's my girl, Maggie. Give them hell. A sense of profound peace settled over me. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. The next morning I dressed with care. I chose a tailored navy blue dress, simple and elegant. I applied a hint of lipstick, the same shade James had always loved. I looked in the mirror and saw not a victim, but a CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. Downstairs, the atmosphere was electric. Elizabeth, Michael, and Agnes were already in the kitchen, their conversation hushed and purposeful. Cassandra entered, her eyes darting between us, sensing the shift but unable to pinpoint its source. "Big plans today?" she asked, her tone lightly mocking. "The biggest," I said, meeting her gaze evenly. "Charles Whitlock is coming over at 10. The name landed like a thunderclap. All color drained from her face. Charles Whitlock was not just a lawyer. He was a symbol of James's power, of the old guard she was trying to usurp. "Charles? Why?" she asked, her voice a notch too high. "Legal matters," I said, my tone dismissive. "Nothing that concerns you." I saw the panic in her eyes. The carefully constructed facade of control began to show its first cracks. She retreated, pulling out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, doubtless texting Thomas. Let him come. At 10 a.m. precisely, the doorbell chimed. Charles Whitlock stood on the doorstep, a bulky leather briefcase in his hand, his expression that of a warrior arriving on the battlefield. "Margaret," he said, his voice carrying through the foyer. "Shall we begin?" The final piece was in place. The stage was set. The silent war was about to become very, very loud.